Welcome back, Screamers, to the final episode of our May Madness series, in which we'll be looking at May's acting roles. And with that, we'll wrap up what has been a thoroughly enjoyable dive into Elaine May's career.
I think, we talked about how we were kind of sad to see this all go. I think this last iteration has been like, it's a good palate cleanse of like, all right, I'm ready to send this one off into the sunset.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about kind of these, and it's not so much, and we'll get into it. I know I'm sort of jumping the gun, but and it's not so much her in these movies, but kind of the films themselves.
Yeah, we posited off mic about a career where May was a more prominent actress than to maybe fill in the gaps and to potentially help her directing and writing. Not that I don't think she needed any help with her writing career. I think she was fine throughout the stuff that she was doing on, kind of on this and on the sly, and then her stuff on Broadway and things like that. I don't think she ever really kind of fell out, and I don't think she was ever want for work, to be honest. But could she have been a more household name if she had been a Carol Burnett or
Lily Tomlin?
Lucille Ball, kind of like that kind of career path where you kind of define the things that you're putting on screen and you're making yourself a prominent player in those things. So let's say she takes the Jeannie Berlin role in A Heartbreak Kid, or she's something else in Mikey and Nikki, potentially part of the conversation in Ishtar, where she is in the things that she is putting out there. I think this kind of answers that. I don't know. Like, I think she obviously was really good in A New Leaf. I think she's good in a lot of these things we're going to talk about today. But I don't think the material's up to snuff with what she was putting out on her own. And I think, like, the only thing that I could see potentially is had she had been a Diane Keaton in Alan's films. Like, if she had been a kind of a player in his orbit throughout the late 70s, throughout his 80s work, what was that kind of more serio comic work, maybe she becomes more of a household name, and maybe we're still giving her directing opportunities, and maybe she mirrors a Mike Nichols-esque career. Maybe she gets to direct The Birdcage rather than just write it. In those types of things, I don't know. We can sit here and what if forever. But as I was sad to kind of leave the Mayverse, now I'm
Mayverse or Elenaverse? I kind of like Elenaverse.
Yeah, I'm okay with either one.
Yeah, good.
Elenaverse. Let's do that.
Good choice.
And so, yeah, I think that I am not ready to be done with Elaine May, but I am definitely okay with where we are in the podcast and kind of letting this sail off into the sunset and let us still have good vibes about all of it.
Yeah, I'm always going to kind of hold her up, on a Mount Rushmore type structure. And to clarify, my Mount Rushmore would be just all women and not a bunch of like white men. But I do think, and I'll put a pin in this and we'll come back to it, but I do think too that the material that she is drawn to, the material that she worked best with in writing and directing, does not really align with, say, Hollywood cinema. It more aligns with something like Yiddish theater that is more steeped in satire and dry, biting humor. Those first three films of hers are that. Ishtar is much more of a Hollywood film, and I think that's one reason that it wasn't successful. I think, too, that, this is why we kind of look at these movies and go, or the movies that she acted in, and kind of, okay, we can leave it there now, because they are much more aligned with Hollywood cinema.
Right. So sorry, Screamers, if I was like, I was down the hall earlier.
we had a bit of technical difficulty. Hopefully we've got it straightened out now. If not, our producer, our very terrible producer, which is me, we'll try to fix it in post.
What do you think would have happened had Mikey and Nikki come out first? Like, had she been given the opportunity to do a Cassavetes film and then led into more what you can consider other Nichols / Allen type movies in A New Leaf and A Heartbreak Kid. Like, what if do you think that potentially that could have been, that studio would have known what to do with it? She could have been kind of brought up in the Cassavetes wave of filmmakers of this kind of like American New Wave, whatever you want to call it, right? I mean, and been able to make her own husbands and her own, those types of movies that are these Romer type films that are, that people still talk about today. And of course, I mean, they're still talking about May's stuff as well. I mean, but do you think that could have shifted her career in a way where she's not pigeonholed? Because the thought process is that when you go into Mikey and Nikki and you've got Peter Falk, and also now I've seen Walter Matthau and Peter Falk's naked ass because of this podcast, which again, given a month ago, it's not something I would have thought that I would be doing.
Jason, this is why we do this podcast. It exposes you quite literally to new things.
Nude things.
Yes,
quite
but it's also
things.
growth, right? It's personal growth.
No. I'm all about it. I'm all about that experience. I'm always it's the little things as you go through this podcast and we do this that they're unexpected, right? I mean, I just didn't foresee it coming. So
that's
the beauty of life, right?
This is an adventure. We are on an adventure.
We're all doing this together.
I love adventures, and this is an adventure. To answer your question, or to address your question, I don't know if Mikey and Nikki was the film she wanted to make first. I know she had been working on it in various stages, but I do wonder if it had come out first, would she have been pigeonholed in a different way? So, I mean, because even as we talk about Mikey and Nikki, we're like, oh, it's a better Cassavetes film than Cassavetes can make. As big of a fan as I am of hers, I don't think that that's fair to her to classify it that way. I think we probably do her a slight injustice in classifying that film as a better Cassavetes film.
Sure, no.
But no, right, so I just think that I wonder if she still doesn't get pigeonholed. I also think, I mean, too, she was the only woman, right, working within that studio system. I don't think they would have ever known what to do with her.
True.
I mean, I think it would have been really interesting to see that film come out first and to see how we would talk about it, or how we would talk about that female perspective on men without having seen the two other films. Because I do think that A New Leaf and A Heartbreak Kid, in a way, teach us how to view an Elaine May film.
Mm-hmm. I'm with you.
And then so we get to Mikey and Nikki, and it's a bit of a departure, but still we're like, oh, I see where this gaze is. I see where this point of view is coming from. I see the difference in perspective, as if it were made by Cassavetes.
Yeah, I guess there was so much criticism leveled at her in A New Leaf and A Heartbreak Kid because of the way that she portrayed women. In the sense that if her first film is sans women at all, aside from the very, very minor characters who are treated poorly, very, very poorly, but also are the only ones that seemingly have a head on their shoulders, right? Then maybe some of that can be reevaluated as A New Leaf and Heartbreak Kid come out, where it's not quite as harsh and she's not seen as like this, this water carrier for whatever wave feminism that was at the time. And
I think technically it was third. I know that we were like talking about
where
this.
Are we now? Just so I know if someone asks.
So this is interesting. It's either fourth or fifth.
Really? I would have figured it was at least fifth.
Well, there's, I think, again, like we are two kind of straight white dudes talking about this, so take all of this with a grain of salt.
We have curious minds.
No, we yes, like very much so. I think we probably should be in fifth, with kind of the rise of technology and how that's being used, and how you look at the conjunction of, say, protest in theory with all of this stuff together. But hopefully someone out there will hear this
and write us out and let us know
and be like, you two are idiots. We appreciate your attempted allyship, but oh my God, shut the fuck up.
Shut the fuck
no,
up. Yeah.
But so I think there is actually a kind of debate in that community, or at least maybe lack of clarity. There's also this idea of, do we have to put necessarily a terminology on it, right?
Right.
Or to classify everything as we are in this wave or this era of history when we're not even past it. I mean, we're still...
Right. Sure.
And I mean, frankly, with the way politics is going, we're going to go back to like first wave.
We're circling back around.
Right. Susan B. Anthony is out there talking about like suffrage and all this other stuff. I mean, in Tennessee and everywhere. So
I just want to be able to be in a position that if a lady comes up and asks me about it, I can explain to her which wave of with some authority.
Let me mansplain feminism to you, ma'am. I'm sorry, is that Ms. or Miss? What does your husband call you? Everyone realizes these are jokes. Just so you know. There's disclaimer.
All right, so
okay, but back
to movies, monkeys.
Back to Elaine May. We'll come to like the new film later. I think let's just stick with Elaine May because I think this is interesting. And we got like
So
started.
Are we going chronological order? Or are we?
Well, I want to touch a bit on the Nichols and May thing. Because this is where, after auditing classes at University of Chicago and then meeting Mike Nichols and going to the Compass Theater, which turned into Second City, the two of them with their improv thing, what strikes me about that is that she's, and I've said this before, but she's more dynamic, but she's also braver. She's willing to sort of work without a net, so to speak, where Nichols always has to know where things are going, even if they just outline stuff. So, their kind of presence on stage together, she seems much more confident, much more the star. And I think we see something different in her movie roles.
Yeah, she's the quirky girl, right? She's, not that Manic Pixie Dream Girl is really the right nomenclature, but she's the oddball, right? She's never the ingenue. She's never really, even in Enter Laughing, she's an old hand at, this acting, school that she's a part of, that her father's a part of, and her father is been there forever, right? So she never gets to play. In fact, this is the only role where I think when she was doing the Nichols and May stuff, she was very much more playful. She was portrayed as youthful. I know what they were trying to do with a lot of that as well, but you're right. She was front and center and was, but in everything else that she did, except for a couple of things, she was a side player that added a little bit of flair and was usually the only thing that anybody ever talked about in those movies. I find it interesting that most of her first stuff was based on stage plays that were done, that were either done by Simon or Nichols or Reiner, or Reiner didn't do the play for Enter Laughing, but and so it seems like she was thought of for movies that were like that were coming off of the stage onto the screen, and you needed someone who could play to the rafters, but in a lot of times in these movies, that playing to the rafters just did not work.
And I think Enter Laughing is a good example of that. So this is a 1967 film. This would be about 6 years after Nichols and May kind of broke up, where she'd been doing mostly screenplays, writing stuff, oftentimes kind of just uncredited or like working, I guess, like behind the scenes, maybe on the writing itself. Is that fair?
I think so. And she had a cameo in The Graduate, and so she was still around the scene essentially. Yeah. But hadn't really seen anything prominent.
Right. And so in this film, she plays a kind of ingenue. Because our main character, David, I forget the actor's name. I'm sorry. He was the one that they were introducing in that film.
He played Poppy in Seinfeld. That was his big.
Okay.
He's been in other things.
He has been, and I don't mean to.
He's a character actor. I think his name is Rennie something or other, Santonio or Santoni. And Yeah, and Alan Arkin played it on stage, which I can see works a lot better than him than Rennie in this role. Everything about this movie just reeks of this being Reiner's first film, and Reiner being way too close to the material to be able to pull back and not just be hackneyed and hammy, and again playing to the rafters, but not knowing what to do with the expansion of the story. Inner Laughing, Love, California Suite, none of those movies, and again, I don't want to jump ahead, but none of those movies know how to take themselves from the stage to the screen and do it well at all. They don't know what, I mean, and so I can see Inner Laughing being really funny, you know, when you're watching it and you're just watching this guy who's stumbling over trying to become an actor, and he's got these overbearing Jewish parents, and he's got a shopkeeper that he works for, and he's got Milton Berle. Is it Milton? No, it's what's the other? Is it Milton Berle who does not Milton Berle? This is terrible.
Don Rickles.
Don Rickles. Thank you. Well, I can't, again, getting old sucks. But so you've got all these little set pieces that come in, and you know that clearly would work probably on the stage, because you're just there's not a lot of place to move around, right? So the physical comedy of it all and the kind of absurdity of it all plays so much better because you've got an audience who's laser focused on the action. In this case, when you start taking things out of the stage and out of your individual set pieces, the only part of Inner Laughing that actually works is when you go back to the theater, and that part is pretty damn funny.
That like third act, like the final act.
Yeah, and like I said, the last 10 minutes of Inner Laughing is pretty damn funny. When he opens the wall and walks through, when he steps on Elaine May's foot and she screams out.
He calls her the wrong name.
Right.
He's exiting.
And but nothing else really works, and it's just such a slog. And like I don't know, I read a bunch of reviews about it. Everyone seems to think it's a fine, nice little film, right? It was easy to sit through. It's something you can just put on. I think Ebert gave it 3.5, 3 stars. I mean, like a lot. So he gave it a thumbs up. And it was like, this is a nice movie, and you can go and watch it. I was like, that's a really kind of faint praise.
I sent you a text when I fired it up, and I said, this is almost unwatchable. I really struggled to get through this. I wanted to like it, but it's also acted like it's a stage play. Like you said, it's like playing to the rafters, and it doesn't work. None of it works. I don't even know like why this cat wants to be an actor. And they even ask him in the film, and he's just like, I mean, it's just...
That's what's so crazy about this and Love is that, like, I guess it makes sense on the stage, but nothing really makes sense. I feel like a lot of the movies in the 60s and early 70s, especially these kind of like movies that are coming from like the early movies from comedy giants, especially things that are coming from the stage to the screen, just don't make sense.
No.
Like there's just something, I don't know how you get lost from a script that you clearly have, you know, that works for. I mean, this was nominated for a Tony, I think. I mean, it's like, not that that's always necessarily a good indicator of greatness or anything like that, but I mean, still, there's something that somebody saw in it. It's got on the stage, it had great reviews. But yeah, you're right. This movie doesn't make any sense. Like you're thrown into this guy. He works as a druggist. And
his parents want him to become. He works in a machine shop.
Right.
For Mr. Foreman, who's like a Jewish boss who, I mean, is also kind of overbearing on this guy, and so his parents want him to go be a druggist, send him to pharmacy school so he can be a druggist, and he's like, I want to be an actor, but
you don't really give it, and you would think that with Reiner, with this being a character stand-in for Carl Reiner, who's the director of this movie, you would have more of a motivation or more of a desire, but this guy seems to just be floating through life on everything. He's supposed to be this character who's not necessarily a Don Juan, but he's buffoonish in the sense where he's attractive to women. Like women are looking at him thinking, well, I mean, Elaine May talks about him being the cute one. The receptionist, one is attracted to him, lets him, put deliveries through the front. I know that's a fucking thinly veiled joke.
Wow. Well, they're supposed to go in the back.
Right. They're supposed to go in the back. And then, and then he is, he has a girlfriend who is supportive of him as well. None of none of that comes across aside from the story telling you that this guy is supposed to be a 40-year-old fresh out of high school who's now and the only acting experience he has. And I get, so the idea is that this is set in the 30s or the 40s, right? When there are these acting schools that you had to pay to come up in. And I think this movie is very dated, and none of this stuff translates well at all today to the reality of today. So if you weren't a fan of like the book, or you hadn't seen the stage play, I just can't imagine anybody sitting through this
in 1967.
Right.
A couple of things on May. I think her tone is really uneven throughout the entire film, but I think we start to see bits and pieces that we see later, in her later acting roles. We start to see some of her physical comedy, some of her physical acting, especially when they're alone in her dressing room and she's getting dressed. She always has this like mischievous look in her eye, which it's almost like at any second she could just light something on fire and just kind of be like, what happened? I don't know. So we started to see that too. But, for the most part, I can't figure out, is she trying to come on to this guy or not? Like, why does she like him so much? Why does she waive his tuition fee? Why does she, on one hand, try to seduce him, and then when he gets too close, she like wants to shake his hand? None of it like makes, I know part of that's like the direction, but also the way she plays it is kind of weird as well.
Right. Yeah. And going back to our original question of like why she didn't act more, I think this is a lot of it. I think she tried to bring a lot to these roles. And again, I know I'm projecting. So, but I think that just knowing her and knowing her. Oh
yeah, you guys are besties.
We are.
Yeah, I'm so jealous too.
Talked the other day. I was at lunch with Jeannie and
that would be. Can you imagine like the text you would get from Elaine May? I mean, look, I know my texts are hilarious, but can you imagine hers?
Yes.
And they'd probably come in like all hours too.
Right. Jason, what are you still up?
Yeah. I mean, I also think this film kind of has a don't tell me what to do, Mom vibe to it. And I think this is something that does translate, to even contemporary society of I want to go into the arts. I don't want to go into this kind of like safe, secure business. I know that nobody wants to go in the arts anymore, and that's too bad. I think that's a real shame. Everyone wants to go into quote unquote business. But this has that same kind of vibe. You'll be a druggist, but I want to be an actor. I want to be an artist. I want to do something else. I know that it's not financially secure, but I have a passion for this thing. And nobody cares about your passion, kid.
Right. And I think this would have worked a lot better had Rennie been a 16, 18-year-old kid.
If it were Ralph Macchio.
Come on. If it was Ralph. Ralph is my male Elaine May. So I'm just going to
Okay. All right. I did not know that about you.
I mean, in all seriousness, Karate Kid's one of my favorite films. But that's where I am in age-wise. And I'll defend that movie. I'm not gonna lie.
You're still a teenager at heart.
But if the main character is a 16-year-old kid who's working in post-Depression era U.S., you can get an idea of why this kid would be enamored. Show him going to the movies a couple of times.
Right.
Like, cut out a lot of the crap. Like, just cut out one. I don't think you need his girlfriend in the role. I don't think that really, because this idea that he's going to go off and get married and become, that probably is not necessary. But if you make this kid a kind of a lover boy type character who is being oppressed by his parents, who wanted to become this boring ass pharmacist, and he works in this low wage blue collar job, and he's always wanted to be an actor, and then he stumbles upon a troupe that has some credentials but is also predatory as well, with the predatory ingenue of Elaine May in this case, where she's clearly older. This movie works a lot better. Yeah. And then you can kind of see in the end scene where he comes into his own, then you're rooting for him, where he sucks when he starts off, but by the end of the play he's killing it. Yeah, I can see Enter Laughing being but it's so stilted. Like when the whole idea of Enter Laughing, when he's reading the stage direction, And I mean, it's just like, oh, I'm looking at the YouTube and I'm like, oh, I got another hour.
I know.
Of this thing,
Well, I just rolled my eyes so hard when I'm like, really, this is what we're doing? I just,
yeah. And I, like you said, I think you can see the beginnings of May trying to take what she was doing with her improvisation and bring something to life to all of these characters.
Yeah.
But you couldn't overcome the material in this case, and you certainly couldn't overcome the casting outside of her. Shelley Winters is terrible in this.
I know.
Just
I know,
terrible.
I know. And you're kind of like, why is she? What is she doing in this?
Like, there's no laugh. Like, there's no like where you. I mean, again, I know this is different, but like you look at George Costanza's parents. That's what they needed to be, right? They needed to be these ridiculous Jewish suburban parents that were just like, Georgie, what are you doing with your life, kind of thing. I mean, like, it needed to be. If you're gonna make it hammy, fucking add some Swiss on there, baby. I mean, just make it a fucking you gotta make it. You gotta make it a
sandwich. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, you gotta make it a sandwich.
Yeah.
I think if we had if I'm trying to get a catchprise or for
make it a sandwich.
Yes, you gotta make it a sandwich. You can't just have all the ingredients. You gotta make it a sandwich.
I like sandwiches.
They're great.
They really are.
Let's move on.
In this film, I think May is the most interesting thing kind of going on.
In her laughing, you mean? Or in love?
In love.
Okay.
In love.
Shit. Sorry.
In both. And what I mean is so Jack Lemmon and Peter Falk are like old school buddies that run into each other when Jack Lemmon is attempting to commit suicide. But the two of them are cartoons. They are caricatures in this film. They're just way over the top. And
this movie would have worked a lot better had it been animated.
Yes, right? Because you could see like Jack Lemmon would be Goofy, like the cartoon character Goofy. Well, his movements are so cartoonish. I mean, the way he moves is just ridiculous. Like he's made out of rubber.
It's like he's playing. I mean, he is playing it for the stage.
It's just way over the top.
Right.
Yeah. And Peter Falk too. As dreamy as he is in this, he's a hot man. I mean, he's really good looking.
I'd have to wait another 10 years to see his ass, but
it's too bad. But so I mean, these two are so kind of amped up, and the actual ingenue character, whose name is Linda, she's also way amped up. And Elaine May comes in, and she's got it just turned down so much compared to everyone else that it makes her more compelling, especially when she sort of breaks out a chart, like charting their sex life. And is just kind of going, you need to listen to me. You need to look at this. You need to look at this. So for me, she's way more interesting than anyone else.
I still think I think you need to break down the plot, though.
Fuck off.
Look, I had to do it for Ishtar. I think you have to do it for love.
All right, so Jack Lemmon is just unhappy with he's a miserable guy and he wants to commit suicide. So he's standing on the bridge. I don't know if it's the Brooklyn Bridge. I don't know if it's the George Washington Bridge. I don't know which bridge it is, or if it's the Manhattan Bridge. Peter Falk comes riding by on his Vespa and eventually recognizes him as his old friend. And they go to a bar, they talk, they commiserate, and he's like, Peter Falk says, okay, listen, you gotta come home with me. I'm gonna make you dinner. You can meet my wife. She's wonderful. I tell you, oh, she's wonderful. They go out. I don't know if they're like in Queens, if they're in like sort of a Long Island suburb. I don't know where they are, but they go to Peter Falk's house. And it turns out that Peter Falk is trying to pawn Jack Lemmon off on his wife so he can get a divorce and marry Linda, the gym teacher. What does Peter Falk? Peter Falk says to Jack Lemmon, I'm more in love today than the day I was married. And Jack Lemmon goes, really? He goes, yeah, now if I could just divorce my wife. So there's some funny lines there. So as it turns out, eventually Elaine May and Jack Lemmon fall in love. Peter Falk runs off with Linda. But those relationships don't work out either because everyone is just super fucking annoying. And so then they do the reverse where they get divorces from their lovers and they get back together. And then Jack Lemmon falls in love with Linda.
Oh, you forgot about the weird subplot of Peter Falk selling.
Oh,
things
that's right.
to
Peter Falk has a secondhand bric-a-brac business, and so he digs through the trash to find like old furniture and old lampshades and anything that people discard. And then these two guys that have like a cart full of stuff will come by and like buy things and haggle for the price. It's ridiculous.
I don't even know where to begin with this movie. Like, I think.
Can I have you noticed that the films that we've talked about in like the late 60s, early 70s, and through I think into like the late 70s are super sweaty and horny?
Yes, yeah.
I mean, I knew this before, but kind of like watching all this stuff again, I'm like, they don't do this anymore. Like no one sweats anymore, and no one is this horny anymore.
And there's I hesitate to use the word bizarre, but I think an underdeveloped gay subtext to this movie where Falk and Lemon potentially are lovers, and Elaine May is a lesbian. And it's I mean, she says as much that she wishes that she was a lesbian. She does,
yeah.
But there's this, I mean, there's an indication that Lemon is suicidal because of, not necessarily, I mean, just because of a life that is essentially loveless because he's a homosexual man in this era.
He says he's never been in love, right? Never once.
And in the way that Falk talks about their time together, and again, I know this is cliche, this is not my ideas coming, but they were cheerleaders together, they were like frat bros.
They were drum majors.
Yeah, okay.
They were leading the,
So, I mean, at what people would have thought were done by
Look, I went to Ohio State. It's a big deal. The drum major dots the I.
I've seen the movie, yeah.
You've seen the Ohio State movie?
No, I've seen Drumline with Nick Cannon. That's how everything works, right?
Yes, exactly.
Look, I take everything that I know about the world, and if a movie told me about it, then that's what I think is real life, and I just discount everything else.
This is. I know this is off topic, and I don't really care, but this is interesting because I don't know about you, but I tend to relate to life through various art forms, whether it's movies, whether it's books, whether it's music, whether it's fucking paintings, but I do. Right. I mean, those things let me look at the world in a different way and maybe learn something new about myself and everything else around me. So I get it. Right. I fucking get it. I will often refer to like scenes from a film, like, oh, that reminds me of this moment in Michelangelo Antonioni's. And I sound like a real douchebag, but I don't care because it makes sense in my head.
Right.
But OK, I mean, notwithstanding. Right. Yeah. I mean, that's what we do. Right. We filter life through culture.
Yeah, of course. And Drumline is what I'm talking about when I talk about culture.
Highbrow culture.
Very, very highbrow culture. I don't, like, I sat and watched this movie as well, and I just was like, what the fuck is going on scene to scene? There are, like I said, there are some really funny bits in it. The sex graph that Elaine shows Falk is funny. Her conversation, once she realizes that hers and Lemon's, I guess it's hers and Falk's relationship is breaking up, and the soliloquy about her, how she wanted or she wished that she was a lesbian. I thought that was really funny. There's bits and pieces, and this is really funny, but then there's just so many like non sequiturs that I was just like, I had to like go back and I was like rewinding because I'm like, did I fucking miss something? Once May and Lemon get together, and Lemon is just basically another man child. He doesn't know how to behave in the world. He doesn't have a job, and the sex that Falk and May weren't having is even less now that she's with Lemon. You can assume that the graph hasn't gone up at all.
Right.
And there's at one point where she's like making him breakfast, and she gives him his paper hat. And that's a thing that happens in this movie.
The paper
and
hat.
like it comes up a couple more times, and I'm like, and then I was like, I think at the end I was like trying to make a connection of like, was he a surgeon or like some sort of like orderly, or like I was trying to add things to this movie that I was just like, nothing. Again, everyone in this movie is so, like you said, so very annoying. So it makes it very difficult to get through. And then Like, so I don't know. I don't know if I was zoning out or if I was just like missing big swaths of character development, because it just, none of it made sense to me at all.
Well, a lot of stuff gets breezed over, and there's a scene where Falk and Lemon are going back and forth about how bad they had it as kids, and that's part of where the paper hat comes from. That's part of why he drinks, a strong drink to Lemon is like 1/3 water. No,
1/3 water, 2/3 milk, and then 1/3 sake and 2/3 milk.
Right. It's why he wants Elaine May to put sugar in his cereal. But I think too that Lemon, I'm going to give this movie like too much credit, and like Lemon too much credit here, or his character. One of the things that he's miserable about is that he can't find sort of satisfaction in being a kind of great man. So when he was in school, he was like the most likely to be everything great in the world, right? He was gonna write a novel. He was going to cure diseases. He was going to do all these things. And he's done none of it, even though he's like traveled the world, lived in brothels. I mean, he says like, I lived in brothels, I did this, I scaled this mountain, all of these things that he has, like, that he just kind of discounts. So I think that's where where the basement and this like operating room theme came in, and where some of these, but again, it's all breezed past. There's no real development, and it's just sort of like pawned off as like exposition. And so we're all like, why is he wearing a paper hat?
Right. And I can forgive the playing to the rafters in this case, because this movie, out of all of them, looks like it was as close to what you saw on the stage as what you saw in the film. The set pieces aren't large. There's a few driving scenes, but there is a bar scene, there's a house scene, and there's a bridge scene, and that's really all you needed. You bounce back and forth between those. Right. So where did we miss? Like, because again, another thing that got good reviews ran for 3 years, and on stage just does not translate to film. Now, Mike Nichols directed the stage play. Again, one of those things where you probably should have gotten Nichols to translate it to screen, because at that point he's a director. I mean, he's doing his own thing and doing it well. Now, I don't know if Nichols turned this down or just didn't want to do it. Obviously, it's it's 69, so it's not like it's who the hell knows, right? There's no going to be history on love. Who's actually heard of this movie or not. But it is, I don't know. Like I said, it's so bonkers, and like it reminds me of, there's a Saturday Night Live sketch when Leslie Nielsen was hosting back in the 90s, and there was a sketch called 1960s Movie, and it was just, there was like a Beatles-esque band, and like Nielsen's big joke, he comes into the screen, he's like, whatever you do, don't show me any gorillas, because I'm really scared of them. And then of course, halfway through the sketch, there's a guy in a gorilla suit, and it's just this like Austin Powers prequel where it's just all insanity, like on the screen, and then they play off, the Beatles play off at the end, and everyone's happy. And this movie's kind of like that, where just there's really nothing that happens that's overly important. All the major themes are kind of just left on the table. There's of all the subtext that is there, they do absolutely nothing with it. And with the people that you have, who are established good actors at this point, like, it's weird that this movie is not more poignant, or or I don't know, just more coherent, because I don't know, like, you complain about, and studios complain about, and again, I get it, because this probably cost nothing, and someone just said, I'm going to do it in 2 months, and here it is. But you complain about someone like May taking too long to edit, or running too much film for certain, but you get a polished product. And then you get this. How much money could this have possibly made? Like, again, this is a footnote, a forgotten footnote, and not that every film needs to be this historical epic event that we're going to carry forward for the next 50 years. But man, this is such a nothing burger of a film. It's so bad.
But like, if you would have told me there's a movie that stars Peter Falk, Jack Lemmon, and Elaine May, I would think kind of on some level that it's good. That it's going to be really good, and this is not.
No, it's not.
And I think a big part of it is, like you said, it's not cohesive at all. It just does not make any sense, and these connections are just not there. And again, it's that translation issue of, I think people trying to do too much, taking it from the stage and putting it on film. I mean, it's like, oh, now we can do all these other things, and maybe there's a reason then it wasn't done in the first place.
Well, it's like there's stage direction that was actually missing in this case. Like someone who understood how it all put together, and the original actors who were on this original stage play understood how it was all put together, didn't do it here. And it just, like I said, I don't know. I don't put the blame necessarily on Falk, May, or Lemon, although I do think someone should have told Lemon, look, this is a movie. Like, you don't need to scream. You don't need to act as bonkers as you're doing. Do it some like at hot level. That's all you need.
There you go, yeah.
You don't need you don't need to ramp that up any more than what you did in Some Like It Hot. Because this is all I don't know. No one's gonna watch this. I don't know what we're
That's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's an interesting artifact, and Elaine May's in it. Next, she would do A New Leaf. We've already talked about A New Leaf, but I think this is where, for me, this is her sweet spot of acting, where she has the physical comedy down. She has the nuanced line delivery down, and that mischievous look in her eye plays really well to everything kind of anti-Mathau in the film.
Yeah, which you would go forward another 7 years to get to California Suite. Everything that works in A New Leaf doesn't work in California Suite.
And she's a footnote in that film.
Yeah, she doesn't come in until an hour 17.
Look, that film's a mess.
It's another one of these movies so California Suite is it's not really an anthology film, but there's four stories.
It's kind of like the Tarantino Four Rooms thing.
Yeah.
Is that
fair? It's fair. Yeah, it's all set on the eve of the Academy Awards. And at the Beverly Hills Hotel, and it's four different stories. A couple from Chicago, London, Philadelphia, and what was the other one?
New York. New York. Because Alan Alda and Jane Fonda.
And so all of this, this is a Neil Simon stage play. Neil Simon didn't direct it. Herbert Ross directed it. Herbert Ross directed Footloose, and he's directed a bunch of things. A lot of things you would have seen, and you would just never known that was a guy that you knew who he was, basically. Also kind of supposedly a tyrant on this set, actually, but that's neither here nor there. This stage play, when Simon's doing it, it is four actors who are doing each of the stories. So basically it's a role for an actor that they desperately want to do, because it shows pathos and drama and physical comedy and subtle comedy and rat-a-tat-tat dialogue, and Simon's known for that too. He's not Mamet, but he definitely has the pointed back and forth. When they translate it to the screen, now it becomes this all-star studded cast, and you get when it's on the stage, it's four stories and four distinct stories. They all happen in the same room. It's the actor and actress couple. It is a couple from New York. It is a foursome of doctors, and that's the slapstick comedy. And then it's a couple from Philadelphia who are attending a bar mitzvah, and that's May and Mathau. And so we're brought in to a story about a mother whose daughter, this is played by Alan Alda and Jane Fonda and Dana Plato, which you don't see until the very end of the movie.
That's who that fucking was?
Yeah. And it's basically a mother who is living in New York. She's separated from her ex-husband for 9 years. The daughter is 17 and decides to be rebellious and move out to California with her father. He's had her for the summer. She's decided to stay. Jane Fonda is going to California to pull her back, and then they have this, this dialogue to determine.
It's a state of the nation kind of a
right. And you could see how this would work on the stage. But actually, this was the part of the movie that probably worked the best for me. I liked seeing them go back and forth, and the dialogue I thought was really kind of sharp, and I thought they both knew how to deliver it really well.
I agree. The other part that I thought worked really well was the Maggie Smith, Michael Caine.
Yeah. So
those two pieces, I thought, why aren't these like their own movies? Mm-hmm. Right. So Maggie Smith, Michael Caine play a couple, a married couple who trade barbs back and forth. They're playful, but they kind of become more and more venomous as the night goes on, or as the movie goes on. They've been drinking. She's an actress who's up for an Oscar award, which is why they're there. she doesn't win. She was a dark horse anyway, right?
Right.
But that adds more and more tension. And then, things get said. We start to find out more and more about him. But I thought like those two
stories were good. And ironically,
and
Maggie Smith actually wins the supporting actress award for this role.
She's so good.
She's good. She's really, really good. And that part was funny, and Kane and her have a good rapport. I think Fonda and Alda have a good rapport.
Yes.
Alda can be grating at times, and a lot of like Alda's roles are like this, these kind of talky East Coast elitist,
intellectual elite.
Right, yeah. So a lot of that was
coastal elite.
Right. But those two stories are told with the most confidence. They're also given the most screen time. We're also introduced to Bill Cosby and Richard Pryor as two African Americans. This is supposedly like some sort of like, we're going to give them some sort of, station in life that you wouldn't normally see, because Cosby and Pryor had just done Uptown Saturday Night a few years earlier. So this maybe kind of puts things on its head a little bit in 1978. But then you reduce them to this awful slapstick comedy that neither one of them, and again, I don't want to get into the Cosby shit, but like neither one of them were known for their physicality, their comedy. They were known for stand-up. They were known for commentary on society in different senses. And I mean, so like to give them roles as doctors and then immediately then devalue them by making them just these Three Stooges these scenarios that just belittle them throughout the entirety of their set was really, really weird. And like it's weird to me. I can understand why Pryor and Cosby would sign up for this, because it does give them the ability to show off dramatic acting chops, but because they're not funny here. There's nothing about their characters.
They're not dramatic either.
Right. And it's just buffoonery that happens, and it really is just kind of like, it's embarrassing by the time it all ends up, and like it just like the things that happen to them are just they're just dumb. They're not played well.
No, and I think there's some political aspects of this as well, where you're like, okay, so you're gonna pick the two black doctors to be like, well, we only have one room, we lost your other reservation. That's who you're gonna. I find all of that really problematic, right? Or to show them, with no regard to the prior couple whose bathroom is overflowing, and like no one cares. They just don't care. Right. And
there's no way that this plays well at all with these characters. Mm-hmm. You should have cast them in some of the other roles at that point. You should have given you can't even put them in this movie. Because if you put them into the Alda and Fonda roles, maybe that works. But then you still
Pryor and Cosby arguing about like that would be really right? That would be really interesting, especially in '78 if the two of them are a couple and argue. Yeah, that would be. And then you can see them chewing on that dialogue and delivering it in a way that, I think the Cosby stuff notwithstanding, I think we know that the two of them can do that if given the sort of right material and the space to do it.
Right.
But yeah, that'd be interesting. Or like you said, if they were able to comment on society around them as two black men in the Beverly Hills Hotel around all of this.
Yeah, you can't make them black and put them in that scenario and then not have something additional from the stage play.
Kick them, just kind of kick them. Because that's what this movie does.
Right. This is like Axel Foley in the Beverly Hills Hotel, but again, without the humor attached to it, and without the punching up that Axel is able to do for these kind of these stuffed shirts that exist in this hotel. So an hour and 17 minutes.
I was going to say, tell us about Elaine May.
And now we're into a scenario where Walter Matthau is arriving in California from Philadelphia to attend his nephew's bar mitzvah. He is met by his brother earlier from the airport, and his brother, now that he's moved out to California, has become this kind of not playboy, but kind of like, he's just kind of gross. He's just a gross old man.
He's a horny old man.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's hitting on young girls. He's always like, making comments as they pass by. They have a night out together. Elaine May is Walter Matthau's wife. She's coming in the next day. So the brother, knowing that he's going to be home alone, hires a hooker. And that's the film's term, not mine. Although, whatever. I'm above saying
like,
hooker, but I don't want to denigrate. But yes, so she's a hooker in this movie. So when Walter Matthau gets back up to his room, there's a hooker waiting for him. He's like stumbling. He's like, he thinks he's in the wrong room. And then cut to black. We wake up the next morning with Matthau. The hooker they both have drank a bottle of tequila, so the hooker is passed out. And he oversleeps. It's 10:45. He was supposed to pick up May at the airport. She comes in. And then there's a lot of buffoonery so it's basically Matthau trying to hide the hooker from May. And then, and so there's a lot of, stumbling over one another. There's like Walter Matthau's trying to grab the body and put it out into the hall. She's not dead. She's just passed out.
Unresponsive.
And then, there's a story of Walter Matthau realizes he can't get out of this scenario. And the hooker is still in the bed. And May, who's desperately tired, who wants to go to sleep before the bar mitzvah. And so Matthau comes clean, and essentially May's like, whatever, I'm gonna go spend all your money and fuck it, like I don't care, like it doesn't matter, we've been married for 15 years, it's not so much that I'm going to leave you. I'm just gonna make you pay for it. And then she does that. She buys a nice dress, gets her hair done, and
gives the hooker her shoes.
Gives the hooker her shoes, and then they go to get a cab to go to the bar mitzvah, and the hooker's taking their cab. And Elaine May's like, I'm not going to be late, so we're going to share a cab with the hooker, and we're going to roll credits, and that's the end of California Suite. Again, I liked this movie because I think let me say this. I liked the high parts of this movie. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I didn't like the low parts, but I think the high parts for me were enough to kind of warm me over to like just a very, very small passing grade. But again, this is not something I'm going to come back to ever again. And it really is like Matthau. Like if you compare this to A New Leaf, where everything in A New Leaf is subtle and subdued but hilarious, this again is played to the rafters. Matthau's all over the place. He's like falling over couches. He's disheveled. He's wearing a pajama shirt, and like pants with his pants unbuttoned, and he's like, it's again, this is Jack Lemmon in Love almost. It's not quite to that level, but it gets there. And May is just kind of stand-in for the audience because we're all just sitting here going, what the fuck are you doing?
What are we doing?
Like, what are we doing here?
Right.
And the scenario is not funny enough to book in to like finish this movie, right? It's not such a there's a passed out hooker in our bed and that happens, so who hasn't been there, right? I mean, like, this is not, I don't know, like, again, I understand this for the stage because then you get to see 4 actors who get to demonstrate a full wide range and you're like, oh shit, they were great in that, and they were great, and they just switched up. I get this on the stage, this idea of like taking this to, you needed to do something different, like, because these stories alone, this just looks like a disjointed movie that you had 4 short films that you could have done, but you didn't have 4 of them that were good. And this is what happens a lot with anthology films anyways, like you have a lot of filler, but then like the Alda and the Fonda scene should have been the bookend. Mm-hmm. You start with, and of course, yes, it is to an extent because Dana Plato comes to the airport and meets up with Fonda and is saying, I'll be back, and whatever, blah 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 blah. And so, and then Fonda goes and gets on the plane. But you needed more of that. You needed less of the Alda Fonda stuff at the beginning, and just had this split up differently. And had those 4 couples interact with one another some way, then maybe this works. But then now you're just left with, I liked this, or I liked the Maggie. Because most people, when you walk away with this, I like the Maggie Smith and Michael Caine stuff. Because again, that was really kind of heartbreaking and touching. Once you find out that Michael Caine is homosexual and he's basically Maggie Smith's his beard, and they're living this marriage of convenience, and it works for them because they make each other laugh, and it's but they're also kind of mean to one another. That's a interesting story. The Alda Fonda stuff is slight, but at least they play it well. The other stuff is just like this slapsticky.
It's filler. It's throwaway. It's filler. And I mean, I think Elaine May's part could have been anyone because she's not really given anything to do.
Right.
And the stuff that she's the stuff that she's good at, the stuff that we saw her excel at in A New Leaf, she has no room to do that anyway.
It seems like all of these things that would have been things that she would have been comfortable doing, and that they probably paid relatively well.
Oh, sure.
I mean,
sure.
But I can't imagine her getting anything like really out of these roles that was substantial. Like, and obviously she didn't get much of a bump. Like, I think if you go back and look at reviews, most of the times they're talking about her. I mean, they're talking about but I mean, it doesn't like lead to. There's no Elaine May starring comedy, right?
No. Well, in the spirit.
Right. So 12 years later.
12 years later.
And with a Jeannie Berlin, who's Elaine May's daughter, script, she stars in an extremely independent film.
Yeah. Directed by a well thought of, kind of renowned acting coach.
Right. Who, very much like Elaine May on A New Leaf, didn't look like she knew where to point the camera.
Yeah.
So you want to give a rundown of what?
Yeah, I'll try here. So this is a movie really about kind of fate and destiny, as a voiceover tells us in the beginning. We have three women. Elaine May's character is named, I can't remember. I just watched this morning. Elaine May's character is named Marianne. Marlo Thomas plays Riva, and Jeannie Berlin plays Crystal, who is a hooker.
And a porn star.
And a porn star, yeah. And she finally got her name like above the title.
Starring in Crystal's balls.
As she says, I suck cock, but never swallowed nothing. Anyway, these three women are sort of brought together by fate. Elaine May and her husband, played by Peter Falk, move out to California for his job, but he gets fired, so they move back to New York, where they kept their co-op apartment. Marlo Thomas plays a kind of new age food store owner, like new psychic. It's weird. I'm never really sure like what she actually is, but she's like, oh, I can help you kind of redecorate, sort of fix up your apartment. So Elaine May gives her $10,000 to do that, and the apartment's a disaster. It's like falling apart. It's all torn up. So she stays with Peter Falk, and Elaine May stay with Marlo Thomas in the spare bedroom that she has kept for her nephew, who's dead. Right? And she can't move any of the stuff. So it's just...
In the off chance that he comes back.
And they're there for like weeks. Now, Marlo Thomas's character, her whole thing is that she helps people. People need her help, and she can't like not help people. So she's helping Crystal, right? Jeannie Berlin's character, this hooker. She's helping her kind of, I don't know, become better, stop eating meat.
Right, take care of herself, yeah, and get on a better diet. And she's got dried out hair and
her skin is bad. But look, she's saving her money so she can go to school and be a bartender.
Because it's got to be a better job than...
Right. So it turns out, if I get this right, because I mean, the plot is...
It's all over the place.
It's weird. Yeah. It turns out that a lot of Crystal's characters were mobsters and crooked cops. And she kept this notebook with like information. Somehow they found out. She gives the notebook to Peter Falk and Elaine May, and
she's trying to hide it. Basically.
She's trying to hide it. She's like, don't tell anybody where this is, and that's where we see Peter Falk's like bare ass, because he's just in the room like naked on the phone.
Yeah, which is a job interview.
Yeah, sure, makes sense. Look. But what I love is that Peter Falk's like, I've never met a more boring hooker. I didn't know a prostitute could be so boring. So people come looking for the notebook, and they kill Crystal, and then they come...
And Peter Falk leaves. Peter Falk
just disappears, right?
Right. But he's tired of living in the room, and like he's tired of being jobless. But yeah, so he can't do it. And he's been having panic attacks ever since they moved back into the room. So like he basically has had enough, and he leaves Elaine May. But he's
just like gone.
He's just gone.
He's just gone from the movie. I mean, he just like disappears from the film. He never comes back.
Right.
I mean, but again, like these directing choices are so odd and so weird.
It is a bizarre script.
So they come looking for Crystal's notebook in Elaine May's place. She freaks out. Right, these cops come again. Blah blah blah. Anyway, it turns out they go on the run. Elaine May and Marlo Thomas go on the run, and they're going to trap the killer, right? So they end up like this ashram. Right? I don't know what else to call it. Right? They're like in the attic.
Well, they go on the run because they start to get like menacing things start happening.
Right.
Them. So Crystal's dead. They meet up with one of Crystal's friends, who's played by Melanie Griffith in a great cameo role.
Right, but a role that she didn't need to do anymore.
No. By this time, she would have been a big star.
Right.
Like this would have been like a personal favor at this point.
This whole movie is like a personal favorite.
It really, really is. And so they meet with Melanie Griffith, and they start to put together that Crystal was hooked up with the mob and with some corrupt cops. And it seems like the corrupt cops and the mobsters potentially have a line on Marlo Thomas and Elaine May. They start to they get into this car that's drive away, but they realize once they get in, they can't get out. Like they've been trapped in this car because the mobsters have pulled out the the door handles, and they've locked everything. And
they're trying to carbon monoxide.
Right. They're able to get out, and so they get freaked. They get spooked, and they decide to go on the run, and go on the run, and then kind of like then turn the tables on the people who are chasing them, who they don't really know, even if they're being chased at all. But they're going to then set up Home Alone style traps for these mobsters in this kind of remote house that they end up staying in.
Yeah, and this guy is like, so before they take off, right, they stop by Marlo Thomas's spiritual advisor's house, played by Olympia Dukakis. Again, like this walk on roll, you're like, why are you here? So I just found that interesting. And then they go to another sort of spiritual place that Marlo Thomas knows of, and says, I told him that your husband's crazy, and he's letting us stay here for free. And he's like this kind of Zen monk, but not a Zen monk.
Right. And they can't stay with Olympia Dukakis because like she's got a couple kids on drugs, and like so like her life is in shambles as well.
But I love that they go to this like ashram. I'm going to keep calling it an ashram. And the guy's like, anything you need from me? And they go, oh, do you have a handgun or a hunting rifle? He's like, of course. Take my dog too. But yeah, so they set up all these like Home Alone style traps. They make a dummy. They hide in trees. They keep a lookout, and eventually,
and they finally crack the code of Crystal's diary, library, June Bible, what they call it.
Yeah.
And they realize that they start putting together names of the mobsters and of the crooked cops. They end up. This is why I get kind of lost. They called somebody. Either they called the cops or somebody called them, and basically Elaine May tells them exactly how to get to the house. Uh-huh. And so the cop it turns out that there's a cop whose name is in the notebook, and he needs to get it back because he doesn't want to be tied to these mobsters if the cops were ever to find the Bible. So he is trying to get it back. He doesn't really even seem to be that menacing or trying to. I mean, he's going to kill them because they know, but that's really all. That's really the only reason why.
Oh, that's it. That's like, yeah.
And then he's able to suss out their traps. They make this dummy, and he's able to use it to set off some of the traps. So they all get caught up in this upstairs attic of this ashram that they're in, whether or not it's in the ashram, whether or not it's an ashram or not. And he goes. They've kept this June Bible, the notebook, in a cooler that has electronics in it. That's like an iron and a hair dryer that are plugged in. So this thing's been electrified the entire. Which is not how any of this would work. But
no.
But regardless of that matter, and then Marlo Thomas tries to warn the crooked cop to not reach into the water. He doesn't get why she's saying that, and he reaches in, and he electrocutes himself, and that's basically it. And then the cops come in the best line of the movie. The cops come to take the crooked cops. The paramedics come to take the crooked cops' electrocuted body away, and they fall into a hole,
a trap that they had dug.
And this Marlo Thomas and it's like they were really good traps, weren't they? There's just like this. There's a sweetness and when the guy gets there to the ashram and is like, and they're trying to get around the traps, and Elaine May's like running, and you see her like kind of like fall into the hole out front. there's some really good about this movie, but overall, like the direction is so bad. One thing I think they should have kept, because when you're first watching this feels like a Paul Thomas Anderson, like you're watching Magnolia. It's got or like the Royal Tenenbaums. Like this is like the voice, the narrator has got an amazing voice, and they do a really good job of like not so much explaining the plot, but like keeping you, I don't know, pulled in, because he keeps talking about how there are certain aspects of one's life where you can turn around and right the wrongs that you've made, or you can
not, say no.
Right, you can change your fate. But once a certain event has happened, you can no longer change that fate. So when Crystal dies, he can no longer change that fate. So, but he's coming. The narrator comes in at these little vignettes, and like this is real calming voice, and he's talking about like again, he's just talking about faith and metaphysics, and I don't know. I felt like, had they kept that throughout the entirety of the movie, this would have made a lot more sense. It comes back into the very, very end, but they drop it about once they leave. And this movie, once Crystal dies, this movie becomes a lot less interesting. Like it's just because I think Marlo Thomas and Elaine May are a fun couple together. And when they are dressed up as hookers, and they're working with Melanie Griffith, that's really funny. Mm-hmm. But then once they're on the lam, it loses a lot of its luster and it loses a lot of its coherence, and like I don't know, like I said, this is just directed really, really poorly. She never directs anything ever again. But like a lot of the scenes they're just framed badly. I mean, they don't like the action is off to the corner. You start losing people, and it was just like I found myself like I don't know what the hell I'm watching here. Right. And for a movie that needs like a Home Alone type understanding of the Rube Goldberg-ness of all of these traps, you got none of that. Nope. Which it could have been a lot of fun. That could have been a really fun aspect of this. Although by that time you would have already seen Home Alone, so it would have been kind of
and Deadly Games.
right, and Code Noel. But I had really never heard of this.
I hadn't either.
Until I knew that they had done a film. I knew that her and her daughter did a film together, but I'd always heard it was just really kind of a slight thing that was kind of ignored. But and I can see why. I mean, like I can't imagine this. Like it played in, I think, New York and LA, and that's basically it, and then lost to. I would imagine it's never been on DVD. Not that that's any sort of like indicator, but for a 1990 film to be this lost, just 30 years later with starring, I mean, Jeannie Burnet's not a huge household name, and but Marlo Thomas, like they would have both been fine. I mean, it had enough names in it above the title that this should have been like is this like fried green tomatoes or something? Like we could have like pulled this up from like the depths of the video shelf hell, but no.
But it just doesn't exist.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a film that does not exist, and
it's on YouTube if you want to watch it.
But the choices are so weird, and you don't see people's faces enough. You don't. I mean, there's a scene where they're on the phone, and like you can't really tell like who's. It's a complete mess.
It makes you wonder why Jeannie didn't direct this herself.
Right.
Like if you have. You've written this script, and the timeline would have been you could have gotten $1 million to get this made, no problem, and this couldn't have cost that much. Like I don't know why she doesn't direct this herself, submit to Sundance, and at least get some sort of like indie darling, sort of notoriety around it. But especially because it could have been seen as a reclamation project for May after Ishtar. We've demolished her. Now let's see what she does on this very much a smaller scale. But it was such an awful outing. It's one of those things where it's almost like once Jeannie Berlin leaves the movie is done. And this is a 30-minute movie once she's gone. And had she been able to had they not killed her, had you just gotten Melanie Griffith's character and killed her, and that been the scaring point for then like Crystal and Mary Ann and Ariva to go run away, then that makes a fun like little like then they could have played off of each other a lot better. And you still have the vulgarity of Crystal juxtaposed against the airheadedness of Marlo Thomas and the kind of like the level-headedness of Elaine May in this case,
and the kind of upper classness of Elaine May in that role too.
Is this the only movie that we watched where Elaine May curses?
Oh, is it? Wait, does she not curse in anything in the Woody Allen stuff?
I don't think so.
Because she drops an F-bomb.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's great.
Yeah. But I'm pretty sure she doesn't in Small Time Crooks, and I don't believe she does in Crisis in 16.
I don't think so either. I think you're right.
So this might be the only time that she curses on the screen.
Well, that's the best thing about this film. The second best thing about this film is the piece that May wrote for the New York Times about this film, which is kind of like a fictionalized interview with Julian Schlossberg, whose name listeners will recognize from me butchering it in past episodes. But he produced it, and she wrote this thing where it's like a back and forth with him, but it's clearly not him. And she ends this like little essay with, and I knew it was time to finish this when I'd reached 1,986 words, and like that's it. It's good. Yeah, it was a New York Times piece, and it's pretty funny. So that was the best thing about that for me. All right.
Let's get into Woody Allen, baby.
Okay, so in this film, right, this is 2000.
Yes.
Correct?
Yeah, this is right in, I think, a pretty decent sweet spot for mid-era Allen films.
I don't like Woody Allen.
I think, I mean, I don't think Curse of the Jade Scorpion. I think what he does after this gets to be kind of bad. Like, there's a slew of films that are bad. But Everyone Says I Love You, Sweet and Low Down, and Deconstructing Henry, I think are probably three of his better films. If you don't like his film, here's the thing. When I was watching these movies, and I was watching it, and again, not like we talked about the Cosby stuff. I don't want to get into the Allen stuff.
No.
But like Allen, I think it's almost like Ayn Rand. Like you outgrow Allen at a certain point, right?
Sure.
Because at a certain point, it's just the same fucking. I mean, look, but this is the worst of it, right?
Yes.
It's the same character over and over.
Well, I think Crisis in 16 is the worst.
Fucking. And here's the thing. I know there's Allen stands out there, and especially if you can separate all the other shit. But those movies that I talked about, I mean, except for Everyone Says I Love You, which he is not the central character of, they're Allen stand-ins, right? I like Scoop and I like Match Point as well.
So I like Match Point. I was going to say I like Match Point.
But I mean, that's the least Allen film of.
But I like that because it's also sort of a retelling of Crime and Punishment in a certain way. So I mean, that's because I'm a fucking nerd. But because when I say I don't like Woody Allen, it's not. I mean, yes, it is the other stuff, but it's more like I don't like him. I don't like his character. I don't like his acting. I don't like all the stuff. I don't like Owen Wilson playing Woody Allen. I don't like Jason Biggs playing Woody Allen. I don't like Kenneth Branagh playing Woody Allen. These are things that I don't like, and I don't look some of his early stuff. Right? I mean, what Annie Hall, Manhattan, Crimes and Misdemeanors. Yeah. I mean, these things. These things are good. I understand that they're good. But like you said, I think after a while, I'm just like, I'm done. I'm out on this guy. I'm done.
These movies that are so clearly just extensions of his stand-up, while there are some, I think I actually do like his stand-up. I think I think Woody Allen's stand-up comic is a really good stand-up album. And again, it's one that probably doesn't translate to the hilarity that it was then to now, but I still think it's a good record. But the movies where he is clearly just doing his stand-up, sometimes it really works, and sometimes it gets to be grating and annoying. What I really found disturbing about Small Time Crooks is the bizarre misogyny and violence that he has that seems to be kind of coming off as like he wants to come off like a Honeymooners vibe. Because this is clearly Woody Allen stepping into a blue-collar role. He's no longer the coastal intellectual elitist. Mm-hmm. He's now just this average Joe, which he's always kind of like skirted the line and tried to paint himself as both anyway. But this one, it seems like he thinks that violence against women and threatened violence against anyone, even if it's ignored. It was just really like, it stood out to me for some reason when I was watching this. It was just like, I don't know, it really was kind of disgusting.
No, me too. Because when he's doing it, he's asking Frenchie, his wife, played by Tracy Ullman, for their savings so he can sort of, put on this caper. His partners in crime are there as well. And so he's trying to act the man, trying to act tough, trying to act the hard guy. And he's like, Frenchie, I'm going to get violent. No one buys it. But even then, you're like, why are you putting on this act for these other guys? Are you putting on this act for us because you think it's funny and we're going to think it's funny? Because it's not. It's pretty cringeworthy.
Right. It's gross.
Yeah, it's gross. And so, like, on one hand, like, violence against women is gross. But then... we don't want to go out on a ledge. Right. If you didn't... I know that's like a hot take. But also this idea of this one man trying to act tough in front of other men is also gross. And so I think you get this kind of confluence of these just two gross kind of typical like toxic masculinity acts.
Right. And the only reason you put it in there is because you think it's funny. Right. Because everything about this movie, every line is supposed to be funny. And so to that end, what it seems to say is then this is how Woody Allen views these blue collar characters, and that he's writing, which is obviously still himself, is that we're all, Fred Flintstone, these characters, but it really just, it adds nothing to the role. So take a step back. Small Time Crooks is a movie about basically kind of a set of bumbling criminals.
Crooks, yeah. And
Woody Allen is he's the brain of all of these crooks.
It was sarcastic.
Right.
It was sarcastic.
We called him that because it was sarcastic. I'm not going to say this movie's not funny. I actually like Small Time Crooks. I don't love this movie, but when I saw it the first time, it was just when it actually came out, I thought it was pretty good. So there's a set of crooks that they drive across. They drive past this pizza place that's shut down, and they are all going to pool their money to lease the pizza place so they can tunnel into a bank that's a couple stores over. Now they're idiots, of course, so that goes awry. But Tracy Ullman is she's a kind of a budding cook. She's married to...
She's Baker.
Yes, and she's married to Woody Allen, and she's the one who controls the purse string, so he has to go to her to get his $6,000, his portion of the cut to lease out this building. And so they need her to cook and to bake to be a front for the store, so they can do their digging in the back without being disturbed. Now she's a cookie baker, and the cookies that she bakes end up taking off, and that's how they become successful. So they end up having to.
We have to introduce Elaine May at this point, because Elaine May is her cousin.
Yes, her cousin. Right. So a couple things. So they go to lease the pizza place, but it's already been leased by another crook that they knew it also in jail, played by John Lovitz, who wants to burn the place down. So they have to
insurance money,
right? Because I burned things. I sent two kids through college by burning stuff down. Really, that was a funny line.
That was funny. Yeah.
So they bring him in, and the cookie store becomes way more successful than they had ever imagined. Now, all the while, Woody Allen and Michael Rappaport, and I forget the other guy's name.
Tony Darrow, right?
Tony Darrow and John Lovitz are all in the bottom digging, but they dig through the wrong place. They dig up through a dress shop. They brought Elaine May in to help with the
help up front.
Yeah, to help Tracy Ullman with the cookies. And Ullman and May in this are delicious. They are both so good, and which is probably the reason I really, really like this movie. But Elaine May plays this kind of dullard who basically takes everything at face value. And so when she goes down, she starts hearing drilling noises in the basement. She goes down to ask what's going on, and Woody Allen tells her that they're expanding. She goes up, and while a TV crew is coming to the cookie shop, she announces that we're expanding into a tea room next door.
And there's a cop who's a repeat customer. This cop loves these cookies, and he's like, "What do you mean?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, the guys are digging in the back to this tea room in the nail shop next door."
And of course, he catches wise to what actually is going on, so he stops them. But since they didn't technically break any laws, he just wants cut in so he can help them franchise. That's the first act of this movie, essentially.
It's franchising the cookie.
They franchise the cookie stores out. So now they become all these nouveau rich jackasses who they jettison their other friends, and now it's Tracy Ullman and Elaine May and Woody Allen. Really, just Tracy Ullman and May trying to navigate the upper crust because they are now wealthier. This is a Beverly Hillbillies type scenario where they're all wealthier now than the wealthiest of the upper crust. They come across Hugh. They throw this party, and it's very Trump-esque. It's all gold lame and like everything
leopard print.
Right. It's all gross and like everyone.
It's garish and it's expensive garish taste.
Right.
So yeah, I think Trump-esque probably described it better.
And so the upper crust, they throw this dinner party because Ullman desperately wants to become part of a sophisticate, yes. And she overhears them all talking about how garish and how bad their tastes are.
Somebody actually said, "Oh, this is Trumpy."
And so enter Hugh Grant, who is the debonair, dashing, world-wise, educated man who sweeps Tracy Ullman off, and like she decides to pay him to show her the world and to educate her on the finer things in life. And of course, Grant is also a grifter who is trying to worm his way into Tracy Ullman's life. So he eventually gets Ullman and Allen to split up. Allen has started spending time with Elaine May because she's simple, and he longs for that lifestyle that he had before they had all the money. And he still longs for the juice. He still wants to be able to commit crimes. And so he devises a plan to steal a necklace. All the while, they've decided to split up. Ullman and Allen have decided to split up. But it turns out that Ullman trusted the wrong accountants. All of their money was embezzled. And Grant leaves. Allen comes back with Ullman, and they go back to living the life they lived before.
But at the heist, right, at the party. So Woody Allen is invited to this party. The woman who owns the house, who's having the party, has this really famous, expensive necklace that she keeps in a safe upstairs in her bedroom, and he knows this because he was there for a dinner party before and kind of scouted the place. So he gets Elaine May to go with him and kind of be a diversion, and she's hilarious in this scene.
And he makes a duplicate of the necklace, so right? He can switch them out without being detected.
And of course, he gets fumbled up in Woody Allen style and ends up stealing the duplicate. Can I point out a couple lines from Elaine May? So she's very nervous around people, right?
And she's trying to distract people from going upstairs so Woody Allen can take time to break open the safe.
I love how she's not good at mingling, so she just starts talking about the weather.
He tells her
it's cloudy today with she just starts reading the weather report.
He tells her just if people ask what to talk to her about, she just stick to the weather. So,
yeah.
So she just starts reading.
But it's like she has all the weather reports, and she meets this guy, and this guy's like, "You're really funny," and he starts talking about, "Oh, I haven't." What does he say? He talks about his like dead wife Helen. And he says, "Oh, I haven't been able to talk to a woman like this since Helen died." And she goes, "Was Helen your wife or just a woman who died?" A guy comes around with like hors d'oeuvres, and she goes, "Oh, I hate anything with a toothpick. They lodge in your throat."
I don't eat any food with toothpicks.
They lodge in your throat.
They always get lodged in your throat.
And then as they're leaving, she tells Woody Allen, "I met a wonderful man who said I reminded him of his dead wife. I assume he meant when she was alive." But her delivery is so deadpan. And so, this kind of goes back to some of the things that she did in A New Leaf, where these deliveries are so kind of nuanced and deadpan, and there's this twinkle in her eye, right? That's almost a wink to us, but it's she cracks me up in this. Oh, and when she has a bull on lips.
Now, were you going to say I'm sorry, what was the... Can't even bring yourself to say it anymore. It's like rocks and tears.
Woody Allen is up cracking the safe, and he's got a stethoscope. And
she thinks he needs it because he's...
They diagnosed it as Parkinson's, but it might be Ebola. She's like, all right, sorry.
Back to the top of the podcast again. This is this is why I wonder why. Like, was she just turning Alan down, or would he just not realize that? Because I'm sure that they were friends or ran in the same circles.
Well, he wrote this for her,
right? So I mean, like, why weren't you using her? Almost in every film that you were putting out, like, I just don't know, like, and he had to have been a student and like known of them, because they would have come up at the same time.
I mean, like, for sure.
So like, it's like, why did you wait this long to put her in?
Yeah, I think,
and what is considered one of your lesser movies?
Yeah, I think these are questions we're never going to have answers to, because she's never going to answer them.
Sure.
Right. And she's what, 88?
Yeah, she's up there.
She's not going to start now, is what I mean. She's not going to start answering these questions now.
Right.
But I think there's really some interesting stuff that must have gone on where she was still working and doing things, but very kind of sporadically and only when she wanted to. And like, we're sitting here talking about this kind of inconsequential Woody Allen film and going, I mean, it's great content, me laughing into the microphone. But it's so funny.
Yeah. And again, it's what she brings to it. It's not like he had this, I don't know, you had this, like, this gem that you just decided to hide and you just never decided to use until Small Time Crooks. Like that, and again, I know that elevates this movie, and by the time we get to Crisis in 16, the people that are working with Alan are only people who are worked with him in the past, or people who need that kind of boost, because at this point, regardless of where you fall into the legality of everything that occurred, he's persona non grata for American actors that that ever want to act again without having to answer that fucking question.
Yeah, and except for Amazon, who would just throw money at people. I mean, especially in 2016.
Right, and all that would have come out. Like, I mean, the Me Too stuff, like, where we were really truly holding people's feet to the fire. Amazon got in bed, and because they intended for this Woody Allen thing to be a boon. Like, this was going to, they got Allen. Like, a guy who, like, what is he thinking, kind of, like, why does he need this? And because he's coming off of Blue Jasmine, and I mean, like, he's coming off of movies that, Midnight in Paris was, again, these are really highly regarded films, kind of like a resurgence. And then he comes in and, like, I mean, and of course, I understand why he does it, because Amazon probably backs a truckload of cash up to him, and also allows him to get funding for these types of things outside of the foreign market. Because most all of his, like, later stuff, the way that he gets his money, because his movies aren't making money in the United States. No. Melinda and Melinda is not making money in the United States. Cafe Society.
Wasn't Wonder Wheel an Amazon film too?
Everything after Crisis in 16. So there's, like, Rifkin's something, and then Wonder Wheel, and
A Rainy Day in New York.
Right, which is the Eisenberg Gomez movie, which I haven't seen any of those. But yeah, so I mean, it's, I don't know, I forgot where I was going with that. But you had
people working with Woody Allen at that time.
You had Elaine May, and you knew how to use her. And you put her in Small Time Crooks, where you didn't put her in, like, you have, I don't want to denigrate anybody else, but, like, you have a role, you could have paired her up with Alan Alda instead of Goldie Hawn in Everyone Says I Love You. Yeah. There's all different kinds of roles where she could have fit in and really, truly taken these films. And because it wasn't like she was a one-note player. I mean, she was best when she was doing this physical comedy where she's playing kind of, like, dumber than the room, that allows for her. But that's not the only thing she ever did, and that's certainly not the only thing that she brought to.
But this also goes back to that idea of Yiddish theater. I mean, this is dry sarcasm, right? This dry kind of biting humor that she's doing. Maybe not so much biting, but this dry humor that she's doing in Small Time Crooks, that she was similar to what she was doing in A New Leaf.
Right.
So,
right. All right, so we want to wrap up Elaine's career. I mean, she's done things since Crisis in 16. She actually did, like, a COVID-based thing, which I haven't seen.
I haven't either, but after Crisis in 16, she won a Tony.
Yes, that's true.
For the revival of the Kenneth Lonergan play, The Waverly Galleries, I believe, directed by Lila Newberg. So yeah, she won a Tony. She's the second oldest actress to win a Tony. So yeah,
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Congrats.
I mean, yeah. Thank you. I'll pass it on to her
when I need to send her some flowers.
When I talk, there's a cease and desist order.
I'm actually on this podcast.
So Small Time Crooks is not funny, or I'm sorry, Crisis and 16.
So I like Small Time Crooks.
Right? No.
I think Ullman and May lift it to the point where it's fun to watch. I think the cringy Allen stuff. I think the cringy Allen stuff is a little disconcerting, but I don't care for. I like Love. Everyone else is fine. I'm not a big Grant fan, right. But regardless.
Yeah.
But yes, Crisis and 16 is not funny.
Yeah, because I agree with you on Small Time Crooks. It's not. Get rid of the Allen stuff. But I mean, no one. You heard me crying, laughing, whatever. Yeah, but Crisis and 16 is just not.
Okay, so Crisis and 16. It's a period piece set in the 70s, mid-century. Maybe it's got to be
Vietnam era.
Yeah, and right in the middle of the Vietnam era, we're with this. They're Jewish couple that are kind of New York suburbanites. That he's a middling writer. Alan's a middling writer. May is his wife, and she's a marriage counselor who does marriage counseling out of her home. That should have been the series. That would have been funny.
That would have been funny. That
had all of the potential. Like, I'll lay this all out when I come back to that. So they. How do they get involved with these young people?
Sure. So Jason Magaro, or John Magaro? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Plays the son of family friends.
Jason Momoa.
Jason Momoa, John Magaro. Okay. Right. Plays the son of family friends who's staying with him while he's going to NYU.
Okay.
And he's going to go into business and he's going to go work, I believe, for his father. Miley Cyrus plays an anti-war radical, a member of a what's the weather?
Oh, the Weather Underground.
The Weather,
but like that,
a member of like a Weather Underground like group. She's a radical communist, and she is an old family friend of Elaine May's, and so she is on the run from the cops.
She's broken out of prison. She's blown herself out of prison, and she's on the run from the cops.
And then so she breaks into their house late one night, and so that's how they get wrapped up with these kids.
So
by happenstance,
Magaro is also engaged to be married to Rachel Brosnahan. I think that's how you say her name. Yeah. But he starts to become enamored with Miley Cyrus's character, and she starts infusing all of these communist ideas into this Jewish group of people in suburban New York. And I don't know if I should even mention that they're Jewish. It's kind of, I don't know if it's important to the plot necessarily, but
yeah. But it's hard not to mention, I think, the Jewishness with any Woody Allen role, because I think he plays that, and he is playing that character.
Right. And so, we're stuck with everyone who's kind of living these mediocre lives, who has this woman enter in there who's exciting and is introducing new ideas. Elaine May is a marriage counselor who runs marriage counseling out of her home to some to varying degrees of success. But she also has a book club. Yeah. The book club starts reading people like Marx and Lenin and so
Chairman Mao.
Chairman Mao, yes,
because he has those great jackets.
Yeah. Don't give this movie more credit. More credit than it's worth.
No, but I was watching that scene where like these women in their 70s and 80s are reading Chairman Mao's book, and they're talking, and I'm like, I could watch this.
Right. There is stuff here, and the narcissistic side of Alan, who can't let the story exist outside of himself. If he ever told a true female story, this could have been, like, if he just let himself sit in the background. So the whole story, basically everyone gets caught up in this Miley Cyrus, drama as she's trying to escape from the cops. Elaine May and Woody Allen, to get her to her next destination, get involved in this plot they want to get her to Cuba, I believe. Mm-hmm. And they come in this plot of trying to get money to Black Panthers, this Cuban money to Black Panthers so they can smuggle her over to Cuba. The Magaro starts to fall in love with her. He decides to start building bombs on his own, and he's going to follow her to Cuba. But it all turns out that his fiance is actually pregnant. It's all a big muddled mess that comes out, and all of it at the end. There's this big end of the series scene where everybody's still involved. There's dysfunctional couples that May needs to counsel. There's a book club that's all chanting for Mao and Marx.
Two Black Panthers
show up who they say play for the Detroit Tigers.
No, they're Detroit Tigers.
The cops show up. The Magaro's blown himself up with the bomb. His parents show up. His fiance shows up. And it's all this kind of kumbaya. It's very much like a lot of other Allen films where this kind of all these scenarios culminate and to a crescendo and
ensemble musical piece,
right? And then and then peter out, and everyone's going back to their normal milquetoast lives after this is all over. Mm-hmm. It is they broke it up into a series. I think Amazon was like, look, we need something more from you than just a movie. Mm-hmm. We need something that's going to get people to come back and watch week after week, even if we dump all this. Because I don't think Amazon was dumping the way Amazon does their series is it's weekly. I have no idea.
Or sometimes they do depending on the run or the length of the run, they'll do 2 at a time or 3 at a time.
So I have no idea how this was released, but this basically breaks down to a 2.5-hour Woody Allen film, which allows him to indulge in all of the things that he's bad at. It allows him to indulge himself with making him the primary focus of a lot of the scenes. And it's just, I don't know, it's annoying and grating, and all the good stuff is given short, secondhand shrift. I mean, it's just, the book club is awesome. The counseling is awesome. And I would have loved to have seen a slew of characters like Lewis Black and his wife. The scene there's a marriage counseling scene where she brings in and the husband has been paying hookers for sex because he finds that exciting. So Elaine May tells him to pay his wife as if she were a hooker. They come back the next time and his wife wants more money. And he's like, I'm not going to pay my wife $700 to sleep with her. And she's like, but you don't think I'm worth that? And Elaine May's like, it's all just money, right? It's just all just your money. It's like, I'm not paying my wife. I can go out and I'm not paying my wife $700 to have sex with her. Those scenarios that could have been an entire, you had you have focused this on
a weekly series on the counseling.
Yeah, a Dr. Katz type of thing, and made this around Elaine, given this the series around Elaine May.
It'd be like Elaine May's Newhart show.
God, it would have been amazing.
The first Newhart show.
And so this is the problem that Allen has at this point, is that he can't get people who know how to do his dialogue anymore to work with him, and so you're stuck with Miley Cyrus. And Miley Cyrus, what you think of her as an artist or whatever, she can't pull off Woody Allen dialogue, and Allen can't direct it. He keeps most of the best lines for himself. And again, it's all still his stand-up. There's some funny, he got that from Charlie Chan. There's some funny lines in there that are pretty good, but over a 2.5-hour movie, man, you're just and this drags so much in the middle. And when you do focus on the love story between Magaro and Cyrus, again, you never buy it, and everything's so telegraphed here. This didn't need, you didn't need to set up a movie and break it up into 6 episodes. What you needed to do was develop a TV show and have an arc. But everything is so telegraphed here because you're so familiar with Allen films that you know where this is going. There's no stakes to any of this. It's all handled so lightheartedly. And again, not that it needs to be overwrought or dramatic, but you need to have some sort of I need to have some sort of reason to come check back in next week because there's nothing going on in here. And some of these episodes were 18 minutes long. They were weirdly paced, and he clearly did not know how to work in this medium. And had he been able to create a 2-hour movie and cut it to be a 2-hour movie, you probably would have lost a lot of a ton of the Cyrus stuff. If you had Cyrus introduced and then gone and cut the whole love sequence out, you could have had the Megaro be infected with the communist ideals, just like you had the book club infected with the communist ideals, and still have him blow himself up, and still have that be a thing, and have the book club be this cute group of old ladies and Joy Behar saying funny things about Mao, and that could have been like these little bits and pieces of a really funny movie that was over in an hour 45 to an hour 50.
Yeah.
But instead, we're cutting this apart, and you're giving him more room. And like the movie should have focused on, if you take it like from a small time Crooks perspective, it should have focused on May and Alan trying to do the right thing for Cyrus, and their bumbling of the plot to get her moved from upper New York to Cuba in the 70s, and having them just stumble over each other, like going to plant the money in a phone booth while they're sitting in a cafe talking about how bad their lives. Yeah, that's the good stuff that Alan brings to the table. And then this was I don't know. It was tough to get through.
It really was. It really was.
And at this point, sorry, I didn't mean to stop. But
no, it's okay.
At this point, like
I don't have much to say about this one.
I mean, it's almost like an Ayn Rand thing. I've just outgrown listening to Alan's shtick at this point.
We're not going to mention Ayn Rand like ever again.
No, I don't. But I'm just that whole idea where like you as a young moviegoer, you're like you're taught that Annie Hall and Manhattan and these movies are seminal films, and then you start to dive in and you realize, okay, well, if all of his films aren't exactly the same, he's certainly the same in all of them. Mm-hmm. He's not bringing anything to the table, and like now, however many years later, 60 years later, we're still 50 years later, we're still having watched him do this, befuddled New York routine. And it's just, I've seen this 100 different times. I don't need to see it. It's not funny anymore. And it's not new enough. It's not sharp enough. And the material's not good enough for me to sit through this yet again. Like, it's not honed. It's just the same thing. It's Woody Allen in another movie,
right,
rather than an actual character.
Right.
And I get why he did all of this. Like the set pieces and the way that it looks is gorgeous. Mm-hmm. He clearly shows that he had a budget. Like he hasn't had this type of budget in a really, really long time, because that movie, and again, I know it's not a movie, but that is gorgeous to look at. I've never seen anything that he's done. Like, you take a look at Small Time Crooks. I mean, it's clearly he's just...
Oh, yeah.
And compared to this, it's night and day. So, like, whoever he got to do his shots, and, like, he's using all of the money that they're giving him, and he's putting it on screen. Kudos to him. Man, this was boring as shit.
Yeah, it was not engaging. And May is earnest, and I think she plays it earnest, and I think there's some humor there. But again, I just don't...
I think she's comfortable with what Alan is trying to do, right?
And I think she can do the dialogue. She can kind of do the back and forth, and I think she's great in that. And they're kind of like bumbling heist scene that they go through. She's good in that. They're both good in that.
That was the highlight for me.
Yeah.
Was when they're jumping over from building to building.
right with the suitcase, and it opens up, and it's, oh my God, the money. And the scene with the cop and the briefcase and the woman in the phone booth.
I don't jump anywhere where gravity is involved.
Again, but that stuff is good, right? Those kind of like quick fire one-liners are really good.
Yeah, this needs to be an hour and a half movie. I think there's a good movie in here. I just don't like whatever they were trying to do and trying to fit.
And he is too involved. He's too much like, let me focus on me. Let me talk about like political stuff, and let me him and haw. And it's just not. It doesn't.
Right.
Because you just want him to shut the fuck up.
And he's not that guy, right? This whole the whole subplot of him not being Salinger, and then he gets pulled over. And,
so stupid.
Right. It is, so stupid, right? It's not, because again, what the fuck does that add to it besides feeding Alan's
ego,
character ego, right? It doesn't add anything to it. So had you made it a Elaine May movie, and then again, I know we've spent 4 episodes on this shit, and of course we're going to be talking about this, right?
Right.
But had you made this Elaine May movie, and you had him just be a voice of annoyance in the background, but in the background, and letting her try to drag him along to get this girl out of their lives so they can get back to their comfortable, mediocre, but comfortable, well-off lives. This is a funny movie.
Yeah, then it's funny.
And then seeing all of that, how and there's something to be said there, right? About then having how just a little seed of this girl who pops up and drops some Marxist thought points here and there, and how it it you know,
and how that plays in conversation,
right,
like
and
back and forth between the two,
and her the kid who's staying there,
and the couples therapy.
Right, exactly, and that's an interesting. That's an interesting idea that you could build off of. Instead, we're just a rambling mess, and like it's one of those things. Like the problem with like looking at Alan's stuff is that there are enough Alan stans that they're going to forgive and love everything that he does, and like but I don't think this was well reviewed. But if you go out and look, I mean, there's just people that are, oh, this is funny and good, and I'm just like, no, you're not looking at this. Like, take a step back.
But this is what happens, I think, with fandom too, and I think this is a different conversation, right? But this is what happens with fandom, is that we like glom onto this, and then that artist, that person can do no wrong, and it doesn't matter. We can't see kind of critically that, oh no, this is brilliant because everything he does is brilliant. And I mean, I know that like there are artists, there are people that, I mean, I have season tickets for, right? I bought stock in it. I'm never selling that stock, right? But I will also say, maybe that wasn't like so good. But I just think that like we have a hard time
listening
when
Brock is telling you that he's better than you.
They know that already. But I think that's a problem with an artist like Woody Allen. I think it's a problem with an artist like Bob Dylan, right? I mean,
sure.
Look, you can't tell me that all of his albums are fucking great, because they're not. There's a lot of shit. There's a lot of shit there. Okay, anyway. I mean, yeah. I think you get it. So look, I think unfortunately,
yeah, I hate to end May on us basically shitting on 6 movies at this point. I mean, like technically 6.
Yeah, but we are not.
Yeah, I don't want.
We're not denigrating Elaine May.
No. I don't think that the things that she was asked to act in and that she chose to act in lived up to her talent level.
Right.
I do think that for the most part, everything that she was in that we talked about today, she was the best thing about that thing. And especially Small Time as Crooks. I mean, and there were moments where she really, really, truly got to shine. And there's things that, like I said, for whatever reason it didn't happen, or she decided that it shouldn't happen. From her directing to her screenwriting to her acting, I wish there were more. I mean,
we both wish there were more. I think we can say that we have become sort of enamored with Elaine May, and I think we can also say with confidence that Elaine May does not care.
Right.
No,
right.
And I mean, these are choices that I think she clearly made, and for her reasons and her reasons alone, as much as we may want her to fill us in. Maybe she'll listen to this one.
Maybe. I'll send it to her publicist and see if we can find out she'll give us a shot. But no, she does. Out of all of this, who the fuck are we?
Oh no,
right.
Right.
I mean, I think that's the message of this podcast: is who the fuck are we? We clearly understand that she doesn't.
That is a tagline,
right? Let us scream. Who the fuck
are we?
All she owes us is her best life, right? Live her best life, and we'll be happy with that. And that goes for filmmakers we don't even fucking like. I mean, that's not
right.
The intent here is not to. It's just to examine. So I am glad we have what we have, and I think the pieces that shine through are phenomenal, and I'm glad to be a fan, and I'm glad to know her work, and I'm glad that we've been able to do this over 4 episodes and know her work better.
Right.
And yeah, so for me to lament, or for us to lament that there's not more of it, I think that's natural. But I don't want to give anybody the impression, especially as we talked about it today, that there's any sort of negativity about any of this.
Oh no, not at all. Just the Woody Allen stuff. I do, and this will kind of be my last note on this, but there's a part of me that likes that we didn't get more, because what we have is a kind of enigma, and that sort of makes it even better. The fact that we can't puzzle all this stuff out, it's like, this makes it even richer.
And I think I don't know if she started out and knew that would be calculated or not. I don't know. Again, we'll never know, right? But she started out from day one, essentially, being an unreliable narrator in her own story. Mm-hmm. And I think part of that is pretty prescient and smart on her part to realize that the not knowing is way more interesting than knowing all the details. And to question and to wonder is part of the beauty of the fandom and part of beauty of and adds to a mystique to her, where, you know, if we knew all the answers and she was coming out and living a fully public life that was you know, here's the Elaine May biography and here's the definitive word, I don't think it wouldn't be, I don't know, we wouldn't still be having this conversation, right? Because we would have already just been able to read about it and go, okay, well, that was the reason why.
Right. And the system was against her, or at least fought against her. And I think she knew that and decided to, I don't know, maybe take this approach and in a way kind of win as well.
Yeah. So, and still kind of, have her own agency and have things that are just for her.
Yeah. So we are Elaine May stans, and she's never done anything wrong ever in her entire life. So we hope you enjoyed kind of the dig and the dive into Elaine May's career, kind of all aspects of her career. I know I certainly did, and I don't know, I'm better for it. Next time, listeners, we will be digging into new films, Triangle of Sadness, Infinity Pool, and Women Talking. Those are 3 strange films to talk about together, but we'll make it work because we're also going to talk about 9 to 5 that the Fort Worth Film Club will be screening in conjunction with
She Dares Collective. So we're in Women's History Month. We're very, very happy to be working with She Dares, and they were the ones who suggested 9 to 5, which I love as a movie, and I think it's a great make a great conversation piece for sure. So
I was going to say. So actually, this will work well. We've got 2 like rich behaving badly films, and we have 2 films about women and women empowerment.
Excellent.
So good. Yeah, good conversation pieces. If there's nothing else, thanks for listening.
Keep screaming.
And so I don't know what else to say except enjoy your food. I'm not sure what it is. What is it? Oh, really? I didn't know. Anyway, have a good time. I'm going to find my way off the stage, and thank you for this amazingly heavy award.
You have been listening to Why Does the Wilhelm Scream with your hosts, Brock and Jason. If you liked today's episode, do us a favor and rate, review, and subscribe in whatever application you use to consume podcasts these days. You can reach us by visiting whydoesthewilhelmscream.com. If you are in the DFW area, we would love to see you at a Fort Worth Film Club event. You can learn more about those and find a full schedule at fortworthfilmclub.com. And you can learn about my foundation and how we are trying to foster the next generation of film lovers at realhousefoundation.org. That's REEL housefoundation.org. Till next time,